Yeah, hello and welcome back to day two of ConWorxx. It's 8 p.m. CET over here, and I'm having a wonderful guest. My good friend Kris Snyder is here, one of the few members of the Chardonnay Mafia. So these are gamers who drink and enjoy cheap Chardonnay at conventions. Well, maybe not enjoy, they drink Chardonnay, cheap Chardonnay at conventions. And this is a really small group, but Kris belongs to it, and me too, and a few other persons. And yeah, we are having in the chat, we are having Kris from the UK saying hi, Kris. But there's also Andre,
Yeah.
and he is one of these members of this Chardonnay mafia as well. But we are not in the wine tasting business yet. Maybe maybe we will do so in a couple of years. Who knows? But I think actually it's announcement time, isn't it, Kris?
Yeah.
So no Chardonnay company. So what are you doing
No.
in the
Uh,
future? And please, before you do so, maybe give us some personal background or some background of yourself, the person, Kris.
yeah, sure. Thanks for that introduction, Uli. So yeah, I'm Kris. For those that don't know me, Kris with a K, so it's easy to remember. I'm an avid board gamer myself. I like playing games with my wife, especially if a game works well at two players. That's always a plus. And yeah, I'm starting my own board game company named Protagonist. And the kind of idea came from this actually a few years ago. And it was, I got laid off from a job, and I was at the time contacting Uli because we met at a convention, and I had tried to see if I could work for Spielworks, and you were like, "No, Spielworks is it's too small to fully have any kind of operating
Yeah.
income for employees." And so you were very kind about that, and that was totally fine. And then like a week later, you had messaged me, and you're like, "How about I help you start a board game company?" And it kind of went from there. So it's now a kind like I like to liken it in my head as a kind of like sister to Spielworks. The games wouldn't necessarily be as heavy as Spielworks or have as many pieces. I personally want to focus on kind of smaller boxes, and when I say that, I'm comparing it to the large Kickstarter games that
Yes.
currently exist. And I'm thinking more along the size of the PAX Premier box,
Hmm.
second edition, not first edition. I give
Yes.
myself a little more space. So yeah, so I'm going to aim for those, or like the Avalon Hill bookcase series, so like
Mm.
1830 or Titan,
Mm.
if you're familiar with those games. So my goal is to have these kind of smaller boxes, and for me personally, I want to. I guess I'll talk about why the company is called Protagonist,
Mhm.
and it's because I view that like when you're playing the game with everybody, you're kind of the protagonist in your own journey within that game. But when you pull back, there's also the protagonist of the designer, sweating away at night after working, because that's, I mean, not everybody can be Uwe, right? And
Yeah.
just
Mhm.
make games full time. But I view that person that's making the game as a protagonist themselves, and even the artist who also is spending time there. And I just kind of wanted this idea of like the game journey um, it doesn't end when you get it in your hands. I think there's a story leading to the time you play, and then I really want to have games that are fun and are carrying stories with you afterwards. So that doesn't mean that my the games I'm looking at currently are narrative driven. They're not. Instead, I want to focus more on unique mechanics and shorter play times.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think like there's a few games that I've looked at and I have gentlemen's agreements with the designers, and I want to try to keep developing them to shrink the time
Yes.
down, because some might run to say 80 minutes, but I think it's better as a 60-minute game.
Hmm.
Um, and that kind of harkens back to BGG Con 2 years ago when you and I were running around the convention halls together, and I was play testing with you, and it was kind of like shadowing, right? And I
Yeah.
saw the way that you had spoke to the designers about changing things and tweaks for after the games were played. But there's one comment you made about uh, Thrones of Allegoria or Throne of Allegoria, and that's right. I get that right.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's that it used to be 8 rounds, and you just decided to throw away 2 rounds and just make it a 6 round game.
Hmm.
And I've been thinking of that whenever I'm play testing games. Is are we adding because the people playing the game are having fun? Are we adding more time to the game so that they can protract this fun versus like shrinking the fun to have them wanting more to want to play it again?
Hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, you could make a game that's 90 minutes and they just play it once, or you could do it 60 minutes and they want to play it a second time.
Hmm.
And I think that there's not enough repeat value in board gaming nowadays. I think if you get someone to play your game 5 times or more,
Oh,
you're
this is
sitting pretty.
already this is great numbers these days. If somebody plays a game 5 times, Ode plays likes to play all their games 50 times, but he's an exception. So really, and if I'm looking at myself, most games I haven't even played 3 times. So this doesn't mean that in my first game I didn't like it. Often it is, nice, good, very good, let's play this again soon, and then it goes back to the close set. Yeah, and of course shorter playtime is helpful in this respect. And when you are saying condensing a game, I think this is a very useful comment, because a game, in my opinion, needs to be as long as it needs to be, which of course is a strange comment now. I think a game like Here I Stand and Virgin Queen, they can last 6 hours or 7 hours, because at least I feel, and the fans of the game, that it's 7 hours well spent. But if you have a game where in the first game round nothing is happening, or almost nothing, it's just a preparation for, now, second game round, now we start. Why don't start with the second round? And if the last round is just anticlimactic anyway, because everybody's just waiting, end game scoring's coming up, then it's also not necessary. And before you continue, sorry for this long
No
stuff here,
worries.
but it comes to my mind right now, because I was talking to Oda and Mike yesterday here at ConWorxx about the new La Granja game. And the new La Granja game, if people who know the original La Granja and now the deluxe edition that is soon out by Board and Dice, that has six, I wanted to say four. So six is better, it's late over here, but the new edition is four. So I was correct in some ways here. And this is an interesting thing, because, of course, it also has problems. Because La Granja is a multi-purpose card game. And if you can use the card effect only 4 times instead of possibly 6 times, that is a huge difference. So you have to be
Yeah.
careful while condensing games to less game rounds. But in general, I agree to you. And sorry now for this long and boring
No, I mean,
interruption.
it's not. No, it's a perfectly valid thing to discuss. I mean, I think in development, like I said, there is this desire to keep adding instead of kind of removing.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to one of the games that is planning that I will be planned to be published. And this is a co-publishing game with you that we've already discussed, and that's Mo's next game, the designer of the cost. And it's called Matchstick Girls, and it's set during Victorian England when they're making. I think it's Victorian England. I may have the time wrong, but it's when they had matchstick factories, and the game itself is you're running 4 individual factories in your larger factory to make matchsticks. It's a 2-player game currently, but what I liked about this game and watching Mo change things, because I've played a number of versions of this game, is that he really wants to know what the spine of the game is, like what its main trigger is for the players. And so sometimes he'll present you this game that seems fully fleshed out and it's ready, and then he's not happy with it and he strips away all the meat and he's just got that spine left, right? And then he starts building back on it, and it's fascinating to watch these different iterations that he's doing with this game in particular. Yeah.
So that is Matchstick Girls, and we will get to this in a second. Here in the chat,
Sure.
Claudius is mentioning also, of course, it's not only playing time, but the huge amount of new games you'll see each and every year, of course, is also important. There's such a glut of games still that you can't play each game 5 times, or it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But considering Matchstick Girls, what I love, it's first the topic is fascinating. But I think, and of course this is really highly subjective because I published the cost, so Mo's first game, Mo's and team's first game. But I really think Mo is currently one of the best designers out there, period. That's what he and his team is. For sure, 100% certain. And in my opinion also, the cost is one of the most important. I'm not saying here on purpose one of the best games. Some people won't like it for sure because of the topic, but it's one of the most important tabletop games of the last 5 years. That's what I'm thinking here. So I'm really, really excited working together with you, Kris, on Matchstick Girls. So more on Matchstick Girls, please.
Yeah. So more to that point, I mean, The Cost was my favorite game in 2020 when it came out. And I told you when I played it with you at BGG-Con, it's truly special, and it is. It's a fantastic design. But what I find interesting about Mo, and I'm sure I believe he's written about it on BGG, but some of his ideas for these games, the genesis of them comes from a documentary he watches. So he might watch a documentary on a subject, and then he starts to wonder, can this like kind of be a game? And with Matchstick Girls and The Cost, and another game he had been working on, I don't know if he's still working on it, so I'm not going to talk on that one, but each of these games, he's bringing to the table this horrific, serious subject. So in The Cost, it's the asbestos industry, which was still operating until 5 years ago, and it still is in some countries. And then he's doing the Matchstick Girls, where there's the primary driver of the game is like pushing your workers to do the task, but it could also cause them to strike, because that's what actually happened. The Matchstick Girls went on strike. And so what he does is he's very adamant about how he wants to approach the subjects. And it's not that he wants to force people to have some sense of morals that are being taught to them, like this is bad, this is terrible, you shouldn't be doing this. But instead he does is he brings you to the spot in the game and is like, here's the tools, you can be good and try to do those things that you in yourself feel is right in the world, or you can be abusive, like some of those people were or are,
still are.
Still are. Yeah.
And so
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting again. Yes, I think this is really the point what Mo is able to bring to the tabletop gamer, and very few other designers are able at this moment to do so. He can bring moral decisions into a game without moralizing. So
Hmm.
moral decisions, to bring moral decisions into a game is easy. Even and I'm not creative at all. I'm not a game designer. I can bring this into a game and say, well, if you plant a tree, you get 3 victory points, and if you're not doing it, 0 victory points. So that is, in a way, it's a moral decision to do so. But moralizing is if you or without moralizing is that you let the players decide what they will do. And at the end, you find out a lot about yourself while
Hmm.
doing so. And of
Yeah.
course, for some people, it's not the right thing because we are educated in special ways on the gaming table. What is the most cool worldly? People know I'm a fanboy. He once said, "I'm not here for the giggles." What is the term "fun" in a game? I'm not here for the giggles, and I think this is also really correct expression. Of course, yes, there are games where you just want to have fun. 10-minute trick taking games and have a great time. That's why games have been made too. But there is more in games. So this is, to me personally, a, a very important subject. Sorry for interrupting you again, Kris.
No,
Here.
that's it's totally on point, and that's kind of like um, one of the things that with Protagonist, like I said, I want to have this story. So like there is and I can talk more about some of the other games, but since we're on this one with Mo Matchstick Girls, there is this part of the game where you need to have a worker in all four of your factories. If you don't, then you lose the game, right? And you can hire them from the worker pool by going around the town. There's this whole setup for that. But if you don't have any workers in the pool, like in the hiring area for you to bring them into the factory, like someone that's new, you have to go to the orphanage and you
Mm.
have to hire a child.
Mm.
And he has actual smaller meeples for that, so the size is actually present there. But when you bring this child in, like um, it's a very serious moment because at least the version I played, I don't know if he's tweaked it any, but um, there's a main driver of the game is stress. So like there's two types of stress that can stress out workers. It's physical and mental. But when a child comes into the factory, it causes stress to every adjacent factory to the child.
Mm.
So like the workers themselves are uncomfortable seeing this
Mm.
decision by the boss. And so I found that to be a really fascinating simple mechanic, like the idea that this worker is in fact like a child, and it child labor laws. And this kind of goes into a thing that Mo mentioned to me before, was that like there are we can all say that like we are against child labor, which is true, right? And there's
Mm.
laws, but like there was a time where that was legal, and the only way that it became illegal was that people were doing it, and it was this horrific thing. So like sometimes bad things need to happen in order for there to be meaningful change and prevent those horrific things from ever happening again. So
Mm.
I find that fascinating about the way he approaches games. Yeah.
Yeah, and Mo is a wonderful designer, and I fully agree. And like in the cost, it doesn't have to be asbestos. Just it
Mm-hmm.
makes you think. And yeah, child labor in lots of countries is non-existing, but there are enough countries on this planet where it's still in use. Or
Mm-hmm.
let's have adults work for 18 hours a day. It's also a decision made by someone so that this is happening. And yeah, so I'm really excited that your new company, Protagonist, is doing together with me Matchstick Girls. I'm really looking forward to this. But Kris, this is not the only game you're thinking about, right? What else is
Yeah,
there?
that's true. So I have one other that it's the one I've had the longest actually, due to the pandemic, and then 2021 has been a pretty rough year around these parts. My just briefly, in at the end of last year, like my mom had her leg amputated because they couldn't save it, and then my father was diagnosed with dementia. In January, my father-in-law passed away. I got diagnosed with severe depression in March, and then unfortunately, my wife was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in May. So 2021 has been kind of like a big,
Yeah.
awful basket of a basket of awful. So anyway, so this game I've had you sent to me a while ago, and I've had it for a long time. But I spoke with the designer today. It's him and his wife have designed this game. I'm not going to say the name at the moment. I will talk about the mechanics. So it's a Euro. The guy is a big fan of his name's Scott. He's a big fan of Splatter, and so this game was actually designed initially for him as like a love letter to Splatter games. Ones that you basically could lose the game on your first turn. It's since been modified a little bit so that you won't lose on your first turn, and there's a lot of really unique mechanics that he had designed in that game that I've stripped away because they're a bit too complicated. One was the movement was equal to the height of your buildings, which I think is fascinating. But when you're playing it with people and it's the first time, like mathing that all out, be like, wait, I can move 2 or can I move 3? It just is like, nah, we're just going to nix that. So anyway, this game is itself has no victory points, and what you have is a set of workers, and the workers are used to go out and get resources like normal, but they can also become buildings. And so what happens is your workers become a permanent building on the board, and those workers are removed from your pool. In a future round later on after the building phase, you can trigger those buildings with those same workers. So basically you have this pool of workers, you do the actions of getting resources or building buildings, and then all those workers have been moved up here, and now you're using those workers again, triggering the buildings on the board. But here's the catch: you can trigger other people's buildings. So they have to spend more of their workers to re-trigger the building. All of this culminates into the idea that you're trying to be the first person to only have 3 workers remaining. That means that you've used up all your workers to create buildings on the board, and they're permanently working there. So I found it really fascinating because it's a race game. It's pretty cutthroat. I've not played too many games that are like race to this, that are not like, spots on the VP track or, run out of X resource or something. So I guess technically the workers in this are a resource, but there are resources as well. So, but I've been enjoying the game. My wife likes it, and it plays really well at 2 players, and it goes up to 4. So,
Yeah. Yeah, but this sounds really intriguing, and I'm
yeah.
curious what the current version is because I know only former incarnations which were
Yeah.
already good, and I think you made the wise decision. There's only one company that can make a game where you lose in the first turn. That's Plotter. And if
Yeah.
you try to be the second company who's doing this, you'll fail. You'll fail. People
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
hate that game. Oh, I lost on the first turn of my first game, so I'm out. No, don't
Yeah.
do this. I
Yeah.
think this is not a good decision. So I know it's very, especially in these times, it's very hard to predict a timeline here. What are you looking there at? Is there a website that you're forming so that people have can look up some information at a certain point? What are you planning, Kris?
Yeah, okay. So I will be having a website soonish. I do have a logo. I just updated my Twitter with the logo. So people can follow my personal Twitter account, and then I've actually put the link to the future business account on there for protag_games. And people have taken Protagonist. It's Twitter. It's old. You can't get what you so I have protag_games, and
Mhm.
that is the handle. I plan to timeline wise, the game that I just mentioned with the husband wife duo. I I'm hoping that it can be Kickstarter end of this year or first thing next year. I am looking to probably use Harold Liske for the work, just because he has experience. You know him personally. He also designed the logo for my company,
Mhm.
and so I have some rapport with him. But more so that I can kind of dip my toes in that world with an experienced artist. I do though want to break away from his work. Not that I don't that I dislike it, but I do want to have a separation from Spielworks
Yeah,
and
makes
Protagonist
sense.
for any partnerships that have a different art aesthetic. Um, but yeah, so my goal here is Q4 or Q1 2022. And with Mo, his game Matchstick Girls, we'll have to discuss that ourselves. But I can see it doing a Kickstarter like in the first half of next year.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of that will come down to production. I would personally, it, I don't want to do production in China myself, and I don't want to necessarily wait around for European regulations with regards to wood. Like you're saying, it's what, like a year out for people to
Yeah.
get some little discs. So I'm actually looking to go to Taiwan, where
Mhm.
I have a rapport with Smooks, and I also lived overseas there. My wife is Taiwanese, so going there for travel would be easy for me and her. So there's a couple people there that have that are in board game production, and I think that they put out some wonderful products. One of is a Pleasant Journey to Neko.
Mhm.
I highly recommend checking that out. It's a high quality game, and so I'm leaning towards production in Taiwan. Also because I'd have to check their shipping, but it might actually be easier to use their local post to mail games to people instead of doing like a massive container shipment. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, where I'm thinking of just cutting out some of these issues that are going on. Of course, it's me saying it now, and in six
Yeah,
months
you never
things could.
know, but the plan sounds good in my opinion, and yeah, all I can say here, good luck with this. And I think you have good ideas, firm ideas. You know what you want to do. So I can only say, hopefully, Protagonist will be a great gaming company in the
Yeah.
future. And there is a comment by Andre, going back to Matchstick Girls. He says, Matchstick Girls sounds very intriguing. Looking forward to this one. Yeah, of course. And
Oh,
then,
great.
Andre, we will play this game and you will probably beat me again. So, and no, so I'm really looking forward to this game
Yeah.
as well. Um, because we are running out here a
Yeah.
little bit
Yep.
of
Understood.
time. Kris, it was wonderful again talking to you. Enjoy the day. It's a Saturday over there as well. You have almost a full day in front of you. Enjoy this day with your wife and
Yeah.
have a cheap Chardonnay. And although it's not a game convention, maybe not
Yeah.
immediately, but later you have to find the bottles which are less than $2. So here it's
Less than
199
$2.
euros, and this is real quality stuff. And then you know,
Sounds good.
uh, after the first sip, you know what I mean with real quality stuff.
Oh yeah, real $2 quality. Yeah. Anyway, Uli, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today, and also for the partnership going forward.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this as well. And here in 15 minutes, I'm having the wonderful Dan Thoreau, Space Biff, as my guest. So let's see what he will tell us, which wisdom he will have for all of us.
He's a
So,
lovely dude. I
yeah,
look forward to
he's great. So, see you soon, Kris,
Yeah.
sooner than later via Skype, most
Yep.
probably. And to all others, if you would like to view the next thing here, it's in 15 minutes. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.